I opened the trust report and saw my name fade line by line. SUVs, tuition, a penthouse view I'd never stood in. Every dollar spelled Lucas. I stood outside my father's office door with the contract under my arm and the hum of a shredder leaking through the wood. The glass wall showed my mother's back, rigid in her white blazer, a shred bin like a silver mouth at her feet. Paper strips curled inside it, soft as confetti. My hand stayed on the handle for one breath, then another. The elevator behind me pinged and went quiet. I turned the knob. My mother's shoulders jolted. She hit the power button and the shredder whined down. My father looked up from the desk, eyes sharp, neck veins raised. He grabbed for a folder, then paused when he saw what I carried. "This is private," he said. "Good," I said. "So is theft." The room went still. Outside, the downtown traffic rolled, a low ocean in the glass. I set the contract on his desk and slid it across. The paper edges caught light. He glanced at the heading, Harris Hotel's governing agreement, and his jaw moved once, like he'd bitten something hard. "Clause 12, I said. "You skipped it." My mother reached for the shredder again, then pulled her hand back. Her nail polish was pale pink, perfect. A stack of vacation brochures hid in the corner under a legal pad, bright islands and boats peeking through. Her phone buzzed and buzzed again. She didn't touch it. The air held, thick and electric, the midpoint of a storm before it breaks. It started with a fake emergency. I was zipping a suitcase, my laptop cord coiled like a snake at the bottom, when Mom called, ragged breath, words tumbling. "Hadley. Honey, it's Grandpa. He fell. He's bad. We need you." The zipper stopped under my hand. My flight to Chicago sat at 3 p.m., the pitch deck locked on my desktop, the kind of meeting you chase for years. I stared at the window glass. Midtown Atlanta flickered white heat. A siren wailed somewhere far. "How bad?" I asked. "Don't ask. Just come." The line cracked, like her hand was over the mic, please. I closed the suitcase and left it by the door. Buckhead smelled like cut grass and wet stone after sprinklers. Grandpa's house sat back from the street under live oaks, brick warm from the morning sun. The front door was unlocked, because he always left it like that while he read the paper and watched CNBC on mute. He looked up when I walked in, glasses low on his nose. The Wall Street Journal spread open, a dark coffee ring on the crossword. A mug steamed at his elbow. The skin around his eyes folded in surprise. "Hadley? You're early. You changing your flight. Mom said you fell." The words came fast. "She said." He stared, then pushed the paper aside. His mouth tightened. He rubbed the bridge of his nose and looked down, pausing like he was choosing a careful step. "She told you that?" I nodded. He leaned back and let his hands rest on the chair arms, the leather creaking. The old clock in the hall clicked out seconds. The house smelled like lemon oil and old books, not antiseptic or blood. "She asked me to lie, Kath," he said, eyes on the table. "Said it would keep things calm if you stayed behind." The floor shifted. No sound, no warning, just the room tilting a degree to the left. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen flashed a new photo from Lucas's page. I tapped it without thinking. White sand. A curve of water bright as glass cleaner. The whole family lined up with drinks. My father with his arm around my mother, aunts and uncles with shades, cousins in floppy hats. Lucas posed on the boat rail, watch flashing. "Family time in paradise." The caption read, blue ocean emojis. Grandpa watched my face, then reached for the old wooden desk by the window. He pulled a drawer, took out a thick folder, and set it on his lap. The man never fidgeted. His hands were steady even when the market bucked. He didn't speak until the folder sat between us on the coffee table. "I hoped I wouldn't need this," he said. "But that photo says otherwise." I opened it. Paper smell rolled out. Ink starch, a line of something metallic. Bank statements, trust reports, transfers routed through accounts with clean names. The numbers stacked like neat bricks. One line showed a tuition check for a school with Ivy in the brochure. Another showed a wire for a German sport car dealership across town. There were shells, charities with no websites, consultancies with no staff, a Caribbean holding company with a pretty name and a P.O. box. My name showed up at the top of forms. Then, right after, the figures slid away. Grandpa tapped one sheet with his finger. I set up 5 million. 2 kids, 2 halves. On paper, simple. In practice, not so simple. He touched another line. "Look here. And here." He turned a page. There was a scan of the original trust letter. I knew his signature the way I knew my own. Firm line, slight lean. Under beneficiary names, L. Harris, H. Harris. Under trustees, my parents. Under restrictions, none, beyond age. "Your dad used the trustee keys like a credit card," Grandpa said. "Your mom passed him the receipts." He reached for a second folder, thinner. "And the hotels, their moving title." He laid a draft agreement down. "Assign control to Lucas. Full voting rights. Contingent on legacy continuity." His mouth twitched. "Who writes this stuff?" The house clock clicked. Somewhere down the block a dog barked, high and steady. I turned another page. A memo flagged a timeline with a cheerful yellow sticky note, after family trip. I closed the folder. The ocean on my phone was too blue. "Who else knows?" I asked. "Julia," he said. "My aunt left when I was a teenager. A blazing exit that ended with a slammed door and the smell of burned coffee. A corporate attorney with a tongue that could peel paint. She never came to Thanksgiving. She sent checks to my school account with no return address. When I was 22, she met me for a burger and said, "Call me when you need a sword." I thought she meant a nice email. She meant this. "She'll come," Grandpa said. She always said your mother was running a beauty pageant with balance sheets. She also said I should buy better shoes. I said because the room needed air. He smiled at that, a flash, then the line of his mouth went flat again. We texted her 2 lines, "Need you." Now, and by afternoon she was in Grandpa's living room in black trousers and flat shoes, and a bun you could bounce a coin on. She took the folder, sat, and read. She didn't speak for a while. Her eyes flicked like a scanner on a copy machine. Then she closed it and put both palms on the stack. "This is fraud," she said. "Braided with vanity, stitched with family. Classic." Grandpa let out a dry breath. "Can we stop it?" "Yes, but in daylight." She looked at me. "They care about image. Use that." She tapped the corner of my phone. "Let people watch." I held the phone. Lucas's ocean grin filled the glass again. His watch was new. The last one had gone missing in Cabo. The caption had a typo he'd never notice. The comments were hearts and fire and living, girls with long nails and boys who wore boat shoes in winter. "Post the truth," Aunt Julia said. "Not bile. Not some essay. Clean lines. Quiet knife." My thumb hovered. I typed one sentence, erased it, typed it again slower. Funny how a fake emergency for my grandfather kept me home while my family flew to the Bahamas. Then I added the rest. Also funny how my trust fund, $5 million meant for me and Lucas, paid for one of us. Also funny how the hotel transfer is dated for next week without my name on it. I hit post. The phone swarmed. Likes, alarms, friends I hadn't seen since high school, a girl from my econ class who once spilled red wine on my dress and cried, a cousin I only saw on Easter, a reporter from a local paper, a hospitality blog with a glossy logo. A man from a rival hotel chain DM'd me, smooth as marble, asking if I wanted to chat regarding governance best practices. I muted him. Lucas called first. "What the hell has?" He used the name from when we were little and he needed me to fix something before Mom saw it. "Take that down. You're making them look bad." "That photo made it look easy," I said. "This makes it look true." "You don't understand," he said, whispering like they were in the next room. "It's complicated. The transfers are simple," I said. "They have dates. Don't do this to Dad. He's under stress. Then he shouldn't sign things." He swore, then hung up. 10 seconds later, Mom's face filled the screen, smooth and tight from a filter that wiped out lines. "Hadley," she said, low and crisp like we were in church. "Delete that." "No. You are embarrassing us." I watched the white of her kitchen behind her, the big farm sink, the row of glass canisters with flour and sugar, labels in looping script. Someone brushed past in a swimsuit. Someone laughed. The blender whirred. The sound scraped. "You shouldn't have used Grandpa's name," I said. "You shouldn't have used my money." She blinked. A thin muscle moved at her jaw. "Your grandfather gave us control for a reason. Lucas had expenses. We handled it." "You handled it by emptying my half," I said. "Honey," she said. The word had a lemon edge. "You're fine. You have a job. You like work." "Liking it doesn't mean paying for your son's hobbies," Aunt Julia said from the couch, voice carrying. Mom's eyes slid to the side on my screen like she'd heard her through the glass. Then she hung up. By evening the comments had stretched long and loud. A line cook from the Midtown property wrote about a late paycheck 2 summers ago. A night auditor wrote about a temporary loan from his hours. A manager wrote "love this brand" / "hate the silence" and added a shrug emoji that landed like a dart. Hospitality outlet ran a short piece, "Family brand faces questions." A popular Atlanta podcast posted a screenshot of my post with a long caption about legacy and power. Grandpa poured coffee into his favorite chipped mug and brought it to me with a folded napkin. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Aunt Julia started a list. "Freeze transfers," she said, writing on a yellow pad. "File a motion. Seek injunction. Alert the board." She tapped the contract in Grandpa's desk like it might wake up. "Do we have the original?" Grandpa nodded and went to his safe. The metal spun under his fingers, and the door swung with a heavy click. He came back with a document in a hard sleeve. My father liked e-signature links. Grandpa liked ink. "When your dad took control," he said, I added a little hinge. He flipped to the last page. Clause 12. If any dishonesty or misconduct is proven, control reverts. Old trick from the banks. Nobody reads the last inch. We stayed up past midnight. We drafted an affidavit. We printed receipts. I sent 20 emails with bullet points and subject lines that looked like warning bells. Every few minutes my phone buzzed with a text I didn't answer. At 2 a.m., my father sent a message that read, "Stop this and come speak like family." He followed it with a second that read, "You don't want to burn bridges." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred, then put the phone face down. At dawn we went downtown. Harris Hotel's lobby had marble floors and a chandelier like a falling waterfall. The wall behind the desk held a black and white photograph of the first boutique location in the 80s. Grandpa in a loosened tie, my father young and handsome with hair, my mother in a blazer with shoulder pads, smiling at a ribbon. Beneath it, the receptionist watched us step out of the elevator with a slow nod, half wary, half curious. Word travels faster than room service when a family business trip's in public. In the hallway, the shredder sound carried. The smell of hot paper leaked under the door. I looked at Aunt Julia. She lifted her chin. Walk in, she said. So I did. My father stood behind his desk, sleeves rolled, tie crooked. He had a neat stack of papers on the right and an empty left side where my mother had made space to feed sheets into the machine. The machine had a see-through bin. White curls pressed against the plastic. One strip slid through the slot and coiled down like a slow snowfall. My mother's hand hovered. Her nails were perfect. Her eyes were wide in a way I knew meant she was planning and failing at speed. You don't belong here, my father said. Leave. I laid the contract on his desk. His eyes went to the header and then to the paragraph I'd highlighted. People in our family loved highlighter more than they loved apologies. He read, blinked, read again. He tried to keep his mouth flat. The corners tugged. You missed this when you drafted the new transfer, I said. We didn't. We, he said with a cold little smile. Julia. Of course. Aunt Julia stepped in like he'd called her to a stage. Hello, Tom. Beautiful shredder. What does it eat? The past. My mother lifted a hand. We don't need lawyers and audiences. You invited yours, I said, nodding toward the glass wall. On the other side, two managers stood pretending to read a bulletin board. A housekeeper in a crisp navy dress rolled a cart past and slowed. My father tapped the desk. You like drama, Hadley? You can keep the Instagram. I'll keep the hotels, I said. Once the board reads Clause 12. Once the court sees the transfers. Once the employees tell their stories. He opened his mouth. A knock hit the door. The head of HR stepped in with a tight smile. Morning, she said. We've had calls. Staff want a meeting. Investors too. The podcast wants you at noon. My father's face went red from collar to hairline. This is not your circus, he said to her, voice even. It is my calendar, she said and backed out. He swallowed. He looked at my mother. She set the paper in her hand on the desk and folded her fingers together. The shredder hummed once, then went still. Sit, I said. We need 3 signatures. Yours, Mom's, and the board's acting chair. You won't bully me in my office, he said. Then I'll do it in your lobby, I said. I'll do it in your penthouse. I'll do it outside on Peachtree with a folding table if we have to. People like folding tables. They look honest. The room stayed quiet. He picked up the contract. He read it again because he had to. When he reached the end, his lips moved without sound. He looked out through the glass. Across the hall, a kid from marketing stood with his hands flat on the frame of the bulletin board, reading nothing. You think you're clever, my father said, voice low. Not clever, Aunt Julia said. Prepared. He set the contract down. He breathed out through his nose. He looked at the shredder like it might tell him what to do. Then Lucas blew in like a door kicked by wind. Red cheeks, damp hair, a luxury watch shining. He closed the door hard, too hard for the hinges. You're ruining everything, he said. Why can't you let it go? I watched the vein in his forehead beat. I watched his eyes go to my phone, then to my face, then to the window. Like exits were printed on glass. Let it go, I asked. That money wasn't a bonus. It was mine. You don't need it, he said, flapping a hand. You love work. You say it all the time. Liking work doesn't pay for your SUV, I said. Your condo. Your watch. Your failed app with the rented office plant. A muscle jumped in his jaw. He looked at our father for rescue and found paperwork instead. My mother's lips parted. No sound came out. Someone knocked again. The sound was a polite tap this time, not a thud. The acting chair, Mrs. Benton, hair like steel wool and pearls sharp as teeth, poked her head in. She had the contract in her inbox already. She had a copy in print now, a red pen clipped to her folder. I hear there's a clause, she said. I do love a clause. She walked in and took a seat without asking. She placed the contract open in front of her and slid on her glasses. We'll need a vote, she said. And a statement. And new directives for payroll. My father tried to speak. She held up one finger, the international sign for wait your turn. He closed his mouth. We voted. My parents wanted to wait. The room didn't. The signatures landed one by one. The sound of the pens scratching hit my skin like rain. After, the door opened and a dozen staff drifted back toward their jobs, faces flushed and bright, like a weird parade had just passed and they'd caught the confetti. Aunt Julia collected the copies and slid them into her bag like a magician packing a deck. Lucas stepped back until his heel hit the bookcase. You'll pay for this, he said. He whispered it, but the words hung. Already did, I said, nodding at the shred bin. The days after ran like a switched-on treadmill. Papers, calls, meetings, a court date set fast because the docket loved a scandal. A judge with a dry wit looked over the trust statements and raised one eyebrow into his hairline. The hotel transfer froze on a clerk's desk like ice in clear water. I came to headquarters each morning and walked past the black and white photo to the open office area where houseplants drooped under too cold air. I sat with the payroll manager and went line by line through hours and back pay. We opened books. We turned on lights. A porter who'd kept his head down for 3 years sat across from me and placed his cap on his knee and said, they took my overtime last Christmas. Said it was holiday spirit. I told him to check his account Friday. He nodded like he'd heard a language he could understand again. People spoke. Quiet at first, then louder. A bartender said the new bar top would had been charged to a consultant. A vendor said a nephew had an event in the ballroom for half price. The list grew. We paid what we owed and cut off what we didn't. The phone slowed to a hum. The comments turned from fire to smoke. Grandpa came in late each morning in a blazer and baseball cap, sat in the corner of the conference room, and watched me move through spreadsheets like a swimmer cutting lanes. Sometimes he raised a hand to point at a column, a little teacherly wave. Sometimes he did the crossword in pen, the left-handed slant marking out answers like footprints. He never told me I was right. He never told me I was wrong. He looked relieved by the numbers going where they were meant to go, the way a builder relaxes when a wall finally lines up with a plumb line. One afternoon, in a glass-walled meeting with the HR head and the Midtown GM, a man in a too-bright tie came to pitch a reputation refresh. He talked for 10 minutes about brand polish and message oxygen and turning the narrative. I thanked him for his time and walked him to the elevator. On the way back, I stopped in the lobby by the black and white photograph. A housekeeper had paused there too, dust cloth in hand, eyes on my mother's old smile. She looked at me in the glass reflection. "You look like him," she said, tipping her chin toward Grandpa's 20-something face in the picture. "Which part?" I asked. "The part that doesn't blink," she said and went back to her cart. At home, texts stacked like bricks. Lucas sent 3, first, you win. Second, can we talk? Third, I'm sorry. The last one had a crying emoji that didn't land right. I set the phone face down again. Mom emailed a link to a blog about staying united and keeping laundry inside. She signed it, "Love, Mom," and added a heart that didn't look real. Dad sent nothing for days, then a single line. "Our lawyers will be in touch." They were, and they were bored, men who sounded tired of the story halfway through telling it. The hearing came quick. Aunt Julia arranged exhibits with a calm that made clerks lean in. She walked the judge through dates, amounts, and clause 12 like she was guiding him downstairs in the dark. My father watched the floor. My mother watched the ceiling. Lucas watched his nails. The judge ruled with words that were plain as water poured into a glass. Misconduct. Reversion. Injunction. Independent audit. Interim control to me as beneficiary and heir. Staff wages to be corrected first. A reporter in the back corner typed so hard her nails clicked like cicadas. After, I stood in the hall where the paint was a color named after oatmeal, and the carpet had a pattern of squares that made you dizzy. A security guard who'd seen half the city through the elevator doors nodded at me. No one clapped. No one hooked. The sound was just shoes and keys and breath. The air had a clean taste. We pushed through the audit and came out with a number that looked like a scraped field. Of the $5 million that should have been ours, a sliver sat in an account with my name on it, and the rest was gone. Cars and condos and failed ventures, parties and tuition, and a stubborn pile of miscellaneous. It didn't matter anymore. The hotels were worth more than money. They were walls and roofs and people who stood all night so someone else could sleep. I started showing up at properties unannounced, mid-morning, midnight, dawn, and walking the halls with managers who held lists and long faces. We fixed what eyes saw first. Leaks, locks, the sticky door on the 8th floor of Midtown that had trapped a housekeeper for 10 minutes the week before, and then we fixed what eyes never saw, payroll, scheduling, the broken way requests looped and died. One night, in the lobby of the flagship, I found a bellman mopping a spill at the base of a column. He looked 20, maybe 21. His tag read Darius. He worked the mop with clean strokes, corner to corner, like a painter. "You here late?" I asked. "Double," he said. He didn't complain. He just stated it like the weather. "Clocked for both?" I asked. He looked surprised and then cautious. "Used to," he said. "Depends who is manager." "It won't," I said. "Not anymore." His mouth eased. He nodded once, a quick lick of a smile, then went back to the mop. At home, on Grandpa's porch, the cicadas screamed. He sat in the old armchair with the cushions that had been reupholstered, so many times the seams looked like scars. He handed me a photo from a drawer. Me at 8, Lucas at 6, both in swim goggles, teeth all over the place, water dripping from our hair. "You kept this?" I asked. "Your grandma liked it," he said. "Said you looked like you were ready to jump." I watched the kids in the gloss hold their breath. "You were right," I said. "About what?" "About the clause." He chuckled. "Always read the last inch, Hadley." We watched the light fade until the street lamps clicked on. My parents avoided prison at first, then didn't. Their lawyers tried angles. The audit tightened like a corset. The charges came, and then the pleas. They blamed the accountants. The accountants blamed the cloud. A judge listened with a tired face and then took his glasses off and rubbed his eyes. The day the sentence came, Lucas didn't show. He posted a photo of a latte instead with a heart in the foam. 3 hours later, he texted me a line that said, "I didn't know," with a string of dots like Morse code. I left it on read. At headquarters, the mood changed slowly, like morning light warming a cold floor. People started saying hello first. They lowered their shoulders. In the cafeteria, laughter rose and didn't choke off when a manager walked in. The GM at the airport location started a wall where staff pinned Polaroids. First paychecks corrected, a birthday cake, a pet turtle someone had adopted from the pond out back after housekeeping found it behind the loading dock. The turtle wore a tiny paper hat in one Polaroid. His name, written in blue marker, was Dividend. We created a scholarship fund for employees' kids. We named it after my grandmother, who wore suits like armor and kissed me on the forehead so hard I felt it all day. The first 3 students came by and shook my hand, eyes bright and scared and full of fight. I gave them envelopes and told them to buy books and send receipts if they wanted to, but not to worry if they lost them under piles of laundry. They laughed. Their parents cried in the hall where the oatmeal paint looked less tired now. A podcast host asked me to come on and tell the story. I sat in a small studio with foam walls and spoke into a silver mic while the producer held up fingers for time. I didn't describe emotions. I named dates and actions. I said what I did on Monday, then Tuesday, then Wednesday. The host asked me what it was like to be cut out. I told her about a shredder, a clause, a staff meeting where a dishwasher raised his hand and asked for better shoes, and the way he didn't glance at the manager for permission. She nodded too many times and edited out her extra nods later. I could tell. Grandpa kept showing up. He met me on the roof of the flagship the night the audit closed. The skyline glittered like the inside of a jewelry box. A late summer storm gathered far off, heat lightning firing silently behind clouds on the horizon. "You built this," I told him, because that's what people say to men like him. He tilted his head. He looked down at the edge where building met sky and the city spread like a map. "We did," he said. "Which means you have to keep it." A breeze cut the heat. The lightning flashed and left the sky darker for a second after. He handed me a key card in a white envelope. "I had them program a new office for you," he said. "Glass walls. Natural light. Plant you can't kill." I picked it out. We went down to see it. The plant looked like it had opinions. I touched its leaf and it swayed like it didn't mind. On the way back to the elevator, my phone buzzed. Lucas again. A photo of us at 6 and 8, goggles and dripping hair. He wrote one line, "Do you remember the rope swing?" I remembered. We jumped off it into Lake Lanier, and Mom screamed from the dock while Dad laughed and told her to let us be kids. I started to type, then stopped. The elevator doors opened. A couple stepped out, luggage rolling behind them, a little boy asleep on his mother's shoulder. His sock had half peeled off and hung on by the toes. I knelt and tugged it back into place. The mother mouthed thank you and walked on, shifting the boy's weight. The elevator closed. The numbers ticked down. The night before my parents reported to begin their sentences, Mom called. Her number lit the screen and I let it go to voicemail. The next morning, I listened at the kitchen counter with the sink running. Hadley, her voice said, thinner than I remembered, like a wire pulled tight. "We're sorry you think we hurt you. We did what we thought was right. Families make choices." She breathed out, then back in. "Take care of your grandfather. He needs someone to bring him grapefruit on Tuesdays. He won't say it, but he likes the ruby kind. Goodbye." I saved it. I didn't answer. I bought grapefruit. A week later, I walked through a suite at the flagship and found the balcony door open to the heat. A wedding party had left in a rush that morning. Champagne flutes on the side table, confetti ground into the rug. The skyline threw hard light through the glass. A napkin on the table read "Best Day Ever" in gold. The balcony rail was warm under my palm. Down on Peachtree, a man hosed a sidewalk, water sliding in fans across concrete. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Julia. "Lunch? Sword down. Tea up." I smiled and wrote back, 10 minutes. Before I left, I closed the balcony door. I picked up the champagne flutes and set them on a tray for housekeeping so the stems wouldn't fall. I turned off the sweet lights and let the room go soft. The napkin stayed on the table, its gold letters catching what sun was left. On my way out, I passed the black and white photograph and stopped. The photo didn't change. It never would. But the lobby felt different, like air after rain. Darius waved from the front desk, a new pair of shoes bright on his feet. That night, I went back to Grandpa's porch. He handed me the crossword. I filled 3 boxes and he filled 10. The cicadas held the night up like a net. In the bedroom, a stack of old hotel keys sat in a bowl. Plastic rectangles from properties we'd sold, metal tags from motels he'd bought, and flipped to pay for soccer cleats and braces. I ran my fingers through them. The sound was soft, like coins. Down the street, a car alarm chirped and stopped. A dog barked once. Somewhere a train blew its long, low horn. The porch fan sliced the heat into strips. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. When I stood to go, Grandpa put a hand on my sleeve and tugged. He looked at me, not like men look at a fight they won, but like builders looking at a wall that's finally straight. "You jump," he said, nodding toward the old photo on the table. "I jump," I said. He let go. I walked out to my car. The night smelled like cut grass and asphalt cooling. On the passenger seat, a white envelope lay where I'd left it, the key card sliding inside with a soft plastic whisper. I slid my fingers along the edge, then tucked it under the visor. I drove home down Peachtree with the windows cracked and the radio low. At a red light, a bus rolled past with an ad for the Midtown property on its side. Clean rooms, warm light, a couple pouring coffee into white cups. The bus brake hissed. The light went green. I turned toward the hotel district and the sign that held my name now, and for a second, in the reflection on the bus window, I saw it written there already. Letters steady lit, not blinking. Down in my bag, my phone buzzed again. "Lucas." A sentence. A gap. Then a second sentence. Then an ellipsis. I didn't pick it up. The city moved. The light shifted. The skyline held. I kept driving, hands steady on the wheel, the key card tucked above me like a small, silent star.